Alfonso Cahero, A Journey into Finance History, Chapter 72, Global Minimum Tax Agreement, 2021. Countries agreed to a global minimum corporate tax rate to prevent tax avoidance. In the bustling streets of cities around the world, a quiet revolution was taking place. It wasn't marked by fiery speeches or dramatic events, but by the subtle shifting of work habits. The 2020s saw the rise of remote work, a trend that would fundamentally alter the landscape of economies and societies. It all started with a global pandemic, a crisis that forced businesses to adapt or perish. As lockdowns swept across nations, companies scrambled to find ways to keep operations running. Offices closed their doors, and workers found themselves logging in from kitchen tables and spare bedrooms. At first, it seemed like a temporary measure, a stopgap solution until life returned to normal. But as weeks turned into months, something remarkable happened. People discovered that they could be just as productive, if not more so, from the comfort of their own homes. Meetings were held over Zoom, projects were completed on Slack, and the concept of the traditional office began to feel increasingly outdated. With the acceptance of remote work came a profound shift in work culture. Gone were the days of long commutes and rigid 9-to-5 schedules. Instead, workers enjoyed newfound flexibility, able to tailor their hours to suit their lifestyles. Parents could drop their kids off at school in the morning and then settle in for a day of work without ever leaving the house. Night owls could burn the midnight oil without fear of judgment from early risers. But perhaps the most significant change was the erosion of the divide between work and home life. No longer confined to a physical office, employees found themselves integrating their professional and personal worlds in ways they never had before. It wasn't uncommon to see children playing in the background of video calls or pets making cameo appearances in virtual meetings. The barriers between work and life became permeable, leading to a more holistic approach to work. As remote work became the new norm, a subset of workers took the concept to its logical extreme: digital nomadism. These adventurous souls packed up their laptops and embarked on journeys around the world, unfettered by the constraints of geography. From beachside bungalows in Bali to mountain retreats in the Swiss Alps, digital nomads set up temporary offices wherever there was an internet connection. For these modern-day wanderers, work was no longer tied to a specific location, but to the boundless possibilities of the digital realm. They traded cubicles for co-working spaces and boardrooms for beachfront cafes, embracing a lifestyle that blended work and travel in perfect harmony. And as their numbers grew, so too did their influence on the global economy. The rise of remote work had far-reaching implications for the real estate market. With workers no longer tethered to city centers by the demands of their jobs, the appeal of urban living began to wane. Skyrocketing housing prices and cramped living conditions drove many to seek greener pastures in the suburbs or beyond. As a result, once desirable urban neighborhoods saw a decline in demand, while suburban and rural areas experienced a resurgence. Families traded high-rise apartments for spacious houses with backyard gardens, drawn by the promise of more space and a slower pace of life. And as remote work continued to gain traction, this trend showed no signs of slowing down. The shift to remote work also had a profound impact on the commercial real estate market. With companies embracing remote work on a large scale, the need for sprawling office complexes began to diminish. Many businesses opted to downsize their physical footprints or abandon them altogether, opting instead for flexible co-working spaces or fully remote operations. This transformation spelled trouble for commercial landlords, who found themselves struggling to fill vacant office space and cover mounting expenses. Some sought to repurpose their properties for alternative uses, such as residential or mixed-use developments, while others faced the prospect of bankruptcy. The once thriving market for commercial real estate was forced to adapt to a new reality, one in which the traditional office was no longer the linchpin of the business world. As workers fled crowded cities in search of more space and a better quality of life, small towns and rural communities experienced a renaissance. Main streets that had once been lined with boarded-up storefronts now bustled with activity as newcomers breathed new life into struggling economies. Local businesses thrived as residents traded chain stores for mom-and-pop shops, eager to support their new communities. But the influx of newcomers also brought challenges, from strains on infrastructure to conflicts over development and gentrification. Longtime residents found themselves grappling with the influx of outsiders, wary of losing the unique character of their towns to the forces of change. And as the line between urban and rural blurred, communities were forced to confront difficult questions about identity, growth, and the future. While remote work offered unprecedented opportunities for some, it also laid bare the gaping disparities that existed in access to technology. In rural areas and low-income communities, reliable internet connections were often hard to come by, leaving many workers stranded on the wrong side of the digital divide. Without access to high-speed internet or the latest technology, they found themselves shut out of the remote work revolution, relegated to low-paying jobs with limited prospects for advancement. The digital divide wasn't just a matter of infrastructure, it was also a reflection of broader inequalities in society. Workers from marginalized communities faced additional barriers to remote work, from discrimination and bias to lack of access to education and training. Bridging the digital divide would require more than just building out broadband networks. It would require a concerted effort to address the systemic injustices that perpetuated inequality. As the dust began to settle on the remote work revolution, the future of work remained uncertain. While many embraced the newfound flexibility and freedom that remote work afforded, others longed for the camaraderie and collaboration of the traditional office. Some companies embraced fully remote or hybrid models, while others insisted on a return to the status quo. But one thing was clear: the genie was out of the bottle, and there was no putting it back. Remote work had proven its worth, not just as a temporary solution to a crisis, but as a viable alternative to the traditional way of working. And as technology continued to advance and society evolved, the possibilities for remote work were limited only by imagination. The rise of remote work wasn't just a local phenomenon, it was a global trend with far-reaching implications. In developing countries, where access to technology was limited and traditional employment opportunities scarce, remote work offered a lifeline to millions of workers. Outsourcing and freelancing platforms connected workers in remote corners of the world with clients and companies halfway across the globe, opening up new opportunities for economic growth and development. But the global nature of remote work also presented challenges, from cultural differences and language barriers to legal and regulatory hurdles. Workers and employers alike grappled with questions of taxation, labor rights, and intellectual property in an increasingly interconnected world. And as remote work continued to reshape the global economy, policymakers scrambled to keep pace with the rapid pace of change, striving to strike a balance between innovation and regulation.